Ethan, you just said, "I don't understand anything," while staring at your history notes. That phrase won't get you help, it's too vague. Instead, try, "I'm struggling with this topic." It's specific. For example, "I'm struggling with the causes of World War I." Now the teacher knows exactly where to start. But I can see you're still nervous. What's holding you back?
Sofia, an adult ESL student, has one urgent goal: pass the final exam in her history class. But Sofia receives a low score on the practice test and realizes she doesn't understand a core topic. Opening state of a stack of notes.
That fear is normal, but teachers respect students who ask for help. It shows you care. And you don't need to know the exact part yet. Just start with, "I'm struggling with this topic." When the teacher asks for specifics, you can point to something in your notes. Good.
How about, "Could you explain it again?" So I'd say, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? I didn't catch the main point." That sounds natural. But wait, how do I say it smoothly? "Could you" becomes "could and "explain it" links to "explain it." Let me try. "Could you explain it again?" Yeah, that flows better.
Look at your notes. You've circled the same term 3 times, but you still can't explain it. That's anxiety talking. But here's the shift. Instead of saying, "I don't get it," say, "I'm not quite clear on this part." It's more specific and shows you're trying. "I'm not quite clear on the causes of the French Revolution." Now you have a target.
But what if I don't know which part is the problem? I'm lost on the whole chapter. Maybe I should just skip the office hours. Wait, I overheard I asking Professor Harris a question yesterday. He said, "Could you explain it again?" And the professor smiled and went into detail. So that phrase works. Let's try it.
Exactly. The D and Y blend, and the T in it links to again. "Could you explain it again?" Now you try. But don't just say it to me, go to the professor's office and say it to him.
I'm standing outside Professor Harris's office, and my heart is pounding. I've got my notes in my hand, but they're a mess. Crossed out lines, question marks everywhere. I almost turn around, but then I remember that 40% on the practice test. I can't fail this course. So I take a deep breath and knock. He says, "Come in." I walk in and say, "Professor, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" And you know what? He smiles and says, "Of course, Sofia." Which part? That phrase, "I'm struggling with this topic," is so much better than "I don't understand anything." It's specific, it's honest, and it invites help. Listen to how it sounds. "I'm struggling with this topic." Now you try it. Think of a subject you're finding difficult and say it out loud. "I'm struggling with this topic." Good. Now add the request. "Could you explain it again?" Notice how "could you" links together. Could ya? That's natural connected speech. Say it with me. Could you explain it again? Perfect. Now you're ready to ask for help without feeling stupid.
Ethan, look at the score. 40%. That's not just a bad grade, it's a warning sign. But here's the thing, you don't have to fail. One specific question can turn this around. You've marked your notes, you know which part confuses you. Now, instead of "I don't get it," use "I'm not quite clear on." That tells the professor exactly where to help. For example, "I'm not quite clear on how the Treaty of Versailles led to World War II." See how that pinpoints the problem? Try saying that with your own topic.
I think it's the part about the Treaty of Versailles. I've read it 5 times, but I still can't connect it to the causes of World War II. If I ask that specifically, do you think he'll think I'm stupid? But I've got to try something I am already failing.
That's the perfect question. And here's a polite way to ask, "Would you mind going over that again?" "Would you mind" is softer than "could you." Listen, "Would you mind going over the Treaty of Versailles again?" It shows respect and makes the professor more willing to help. Notice how "would you mind" links together smoothly. "Would ya mind?" That's natural. Now, you try saying it with your specific topic.
My notes are in my hand, marked and ready. I take a deep breath. I knock. He says, "Come in." I walk in and say, "Professor Harris, I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Would you mind going over the connection to World War II again?" He looks up and smiles. He says, "Of course, have a seat."
That 40% is a loud warning, Ethan. But notice something. You knew exactly which part confused you. That's power. You're about to do the opposite. So here's the plan. You'll ask for one specific explanation, and that will change everything.
So I'm not going to say, "I don't understand anything." I'll say, "Professor, I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain it again?" That feels direct, not stupid. But what if he thinks I should have gotten it by now? I'm still nervous. It's honest, and it invites help. For example, I could say, I'm struggling with this topic. The causes of World War I still confuse me. Now you try it. Think of a topic you're struggling with and say that phrase to yourself.
That fear is normal, but here's a phrase that will help you get a step-by-step answer. Walk me through. It means explain it in order, slowly. You could say, Professor, could you walk me through the Treaty of Versailles? Listen, walk me through. Now try it for something else. Could you walk me through the process of applying for a visa?
It sounds like I'm asking for a map, not admitting defeat. So I'll say, Professor, could you walk me through the Treaty of Versailles? That's my line. I'm going to knock. Now.
I know you want to avoid the professor, but studying alone won't work. You tried that already. So let's make your notes your weapon. Underline the exact sentence you don't understand. Then we'll turn that into a question.
Here's a sentence I don't get. The Treaty of Versailles imposed heavy reparations on Germany. I didn't catch what reparations means. Could you explain that part again? That's a useful chunk. I didn't catch that. It's perfect when you miss one specific word. Could you repeat it? Now underline your own confusing sentence and ask about it.
I realize I might fail the course. I decide to study alone with my notes. It works better because it's too vague and sounds like you gave up. Teachers need to know exactly where you're stuck.
So I'll say, Professor, I didn't catch what reparations means. Could you explain it again? That's clear. I'm ready. I'm going to knock on his office door now. Wish me luck.
After I ask, Professor Harris says, which part is giving you trouble? I point in my notes and say, the Treaty of Versailles. I read the chapter, but I'm not clear on how the reparations led to World War II. He nods and says, good question. Let me walk you through it. That phrase, walk me through, is gold. It means explain it step by step. Listen, could you walk me through the Treaty of Versailles? It's like asking for a map. Now you try it. Think of a process you need explained and say, could you walk me through? For example, could you walk me through the process of applying for a visa? Say it out loud. Good. Now, when you need a concrete example, you can say, could you give an example? That's perfect when you understand the theory but need a real case. For instance, I understand the reparations, but could you give an example? Try that one too. These phrases make abstract ideas concrete and easier to remember.
I'm standing in front of his door now. My heart is pounding. I'm holding my notes, but I feel like I'm going to forget everything. What if he thinks I'm dumb? I have to do this.
That fear is exactly why you need this. Remember, the professor is there to help. You're not bothering him, you're showing you care. Take a deep breath. Knock. When he says, come in, walk in and say your first line. You've got this.
I knock. I see him at his desk. He looks up and smiles. I take a breath and say, Professor, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?
I look at my notes and they're a mess, crossed out lines, question marks everywhere. I feel completely hopeless. But then I remember the phrase Ethan taught me, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? It's direct and honest. It tells the professor exactly where I need help. Try saying it with me, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? Notice how could you links together Kuja. That's natural connected speech. Now you try.
I'm in the professor's office, and he's just explained the causes of the war. I look at my notes, and suddenly the timeline is clear. I feel relief. But then he asks, any other questions? My mind goes blank. I don't want to leave yet. I need to make sure I really get it.
Don't panic. That's the perfect moment to ask for an example. For instance, you could say, I understand the theory, but could you give an example? This phrase works in any subject.
Think of it like a recipe. If you miss one ingredient, the whole cake falls. I laugh. He continues. I say, I was overthinking it. He smiles. Exactly. That phrase I was overthinking it is so useful. It admits you made it harder than it was, and it shows you now understand. I was overthinking it. Now you say it.
I'm staring at my notes, and they're a disaster. I can't even tell what I was thinking. I feel so hopeless. I think maybe I really can't do this. But then I remember what Ethan said, ask for help. So I take a deep breath and decide to try.
When you say, I don't understand anything, it's too vague. The professor doesn't know where to start. So, you need to be specific. Look at your notes, find the exact part that confuses you, and say, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? This phrase is direct and honest, and it tells the teacher exactly what you need. It's not a weakness to ask, it's actually a smart move. So, let's practice that line one more time. I'm struggling with this topic.
I look at my notes and see a section about the Treaty of Versailles. I remember the professor mentioned it, but I didn't catch the details. So I say to myself, that's the part. I circle it and write ? Next to it. Now I have a specific question to ask. I feel a little better.
Now you're ready. Practice saying it. I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? Say it with me. I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? Good.
After class, I'm in the hallway, trying to avoid the professor's office. Then I see Ethan. He just walks up, says, "Hey, professor, I didn't catch the part about the reparations. Could you go over it?" And Professor Harris smiles, says, "Sure, let me explain it differently." Just like that. No judgment. My heart races.
Exactly. Because I asked a specific question, the professor could give him a targeted explanation. That's the power of being clear about what you need. Now, you can do the same. When you go to the professor's office, don't just say you're lost. Point to the part in your notes and say, "I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time?" That shows respect for their time and make it easy for them to help you. Try that phrase. "I'm having trouble understanding this part."
I'm in the hallway after class, and I see Jake walk up to Professor Harris. He says, "Hey, professor, I didn't catch the part about the reparations. Could you go over it?" And the professor smiles and says, "Sure, let me explain it differently." Just like that. No judgment. My heart races because I realize I can do that too. So I gather my notes and head to his office. I knock, and when he says, "Come in," I say, "Professor, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" He asks which part, and I point to the Treaty of Versailles. He explains it with an analogy, and suddenly it clicks. That phrase, "I'm struggling with this topic," is so powerful. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. It shows you're serious about learning. Now you try it. Say, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" Notice how could you becomes could in natural speech. Practice that. Could you explain it again? Good. Now you have the tool to ask for help confidently.
And that's the moment. She's in the office. The professor will ask, "Which part?" And Sofia will point to the Treaty of Versailles. Then he'll explain it with an analogy.
Ethan walks up to Professor Harris and says, "Professor, I didn't catch the part about the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain that part again?" And the professor nods, says, "Of course, Ethan. Let me walk you through it." His face isn't annoyed at all. That's when it hits me. Asking a specific question doesn't make you look stupid. It makes you look serious about learning.
The professor knew exactly what to explain, and he was happy to help. Here's why that works. When you name the exact part you're stuck on, the teacher can jump right to it. "I didn't catch the part about," and fill in your topic. It shows you've been paying attention. You just need a little clarity.
Now, in the office, I'll say, "I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain that part again?" That's specific. That's clear. And notice the rhythm. "I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles." Stress the important words. It helps the professor hear exactly where you need help.
Perfect. You've marked your notes. The professor is in his office. This is your moment. Walk in, take a breath, and say, "Professor Harris, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" You're not admitting weakness. You're showing you care about learning. And remember, if you freeze up, just point to your notes and say, "I didn't catch this part." That's enough to get the conversation started.
Ethan's question was so simple. He just pointed to a specific part and said, "I didn't catch that." The professor didn't roll his eyes. He leaned in and explained it like it was nothing. That's when I knew asking doesn't make you look stupid.
Sofia marks specific confusing parts in her notes. The useful wording here is, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" Complication state of a stack of notes. The next sentence needs to do one job clearly.
I take out my pen and start underlining the exact lines I don't get. The Treaty of Versailles, I circle that. The League of Nations, I put a question mark next to it. Now my notes aren't a mess. They're a map of exactly what to ask.
That's the difference. Before, you had a wall of text. Now you have 3 clear questions. When you walk in, you won't say, "I'm lost." You'll say, "I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles." That's powerful.
I mark the confusing parts in my notes. The phrase I'll use is, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" That's the key. It admits difficulty, but doesn't sound helpless. Good. Now, when you're in the office, you'll sound natural.
So I circle the Treaty of Versailles and write League of Nations. with a question mark. That's it. I don't need to understand everything, just those two parts. Now my notes have clear questions.
Exactly. Now you're not lost. You're prepared. When you walk into that office, you'll say, I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain it again? That's specific. That's respectful. And that's how you get the help you need.
I take a deep breath and walk toward the professor's office. My notes are in my hand, and I've practiced the line. But my heart is pounding. What if he thinks my question is stupid? I almost turn around.
Now, look at your notes. You've circled the Treaty of Versailles and written League of Nations with a question mark. That's perfect. Now, when you talk to the professor, you can say, I'm not quite clear on the League of Nations part. That's specific. Is it Friday or Monday? See the difference? You point exactly where you're stuck. And here's why that phrase works. I'm not quite clear on sounds professional and focused. It tells the teacher you've tried, but you need a little help on one point. Try it now. Repeat after me. I'm not quite clear on the assignment deadline. Good. Now, when you're in the office, use that phrase and watch how the professor responds.
That moment when Sophia almost turned away, I felt that. I was standing outside Professor Harris's office, my notes a mess of crossed out lines and question marks. The practice test score of 40% kept flashing in my mind. I remembered how I just walked in and asked without any fear. So I took a breath, knocked, and said, Professor, I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time?
Good. Now you're in the office. The professor looks up and smiles. He says, What can I do for you, Ethan? Now, this is the moment. You have two choices. Or you can say, I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain it again? Which one do you think gets you a better answer?
Now the earlier behavior makes sense. Sophia overhears another student casually asking the professor for help and getting a simple, kind explanation. Sophia walks to the professor's office, but hesitates at the door. The useful wording here is, I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time?
Now the earlier behavior makes sense. I overhears another student casually asking the professor for help and getting a simple, kind explanation. I walk to the professor's office, but hesitates at the door. Complication state of a stack of notes.
Now the earlier behavior makes sense. Sophia overhears another student casually asking the professor for help and getting a simple, kind explanation. Sophia walks to the professor's office, but hesitates at the door. Complication state of a stack of notes.
Now the earlier behavior makes sense. I overhears another student casually asking the professor for help and getting a simple, kind explanation. I walk to the professor's office, but hesitates at the door. Complication state of a stack of notes.
And I noticed you used a very specific phrase. I'm struggling with the Treaty of Versailles. Could you explain it again? That's so much better than just saying, I don't understand anything. But what if you need more than a re-explanation? What if you want the professor to go step by step? There's a perfect phrase for that. Could you walk me through it? For example, Professor, I'm not quite clear on how the alliances started the war. Could you walk me through it? That tells them exactly what you need, a detailed, step-by-step breakdown.
So there I was, standing outside Professor Harris's office, my notes a mess of crossed out lines and question marks. But now my hand was on the door and I couldn't make myself knock. My heart was pounding. I almost turned around and left. But then I remembered that practice test score, 40%. If I didn't ask for help, I was going to fail. So I took a deep breath and knocked.
When I finally knocked, my hand was shaking. My voice came out a little shaky, but I said, Professor, I'm struggling with the League of Nations part. Could you explain it again? And instead of looking annoyed, he looked up, smiled, and said, Of course. Which part exactly? That smile, it made all the difference. I realized he actually wanted to help.
When the professor asked, which part exactly? I froze for a second. I hadn't expected him to ask that. But then I remembered a phrase I'd practiced. Sorry, I didn't catch that last part. Could you repeat it? That phrase is perfect when you need a specific section repeated. In class, you can say, sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say it again? Notice how didn't catch that links together didn't catch that sounds almost like didn't catch that. Now let's use it in a full sentence. Sorry, I didn't catch that last part. Could you repeat it? Your turn.
Professor Harris didn't just repeat the lecture. He saw her marked notes and said, you're stuck on the alliance system. Think of it like a row of dominoes. He walked her through each event step by step. Sophia's notes went from messy to clear, with neat annotations. I was overthinking it. That one specific question, I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment? Turned her confusion into a B+.
My hand is on the cold door handle. I'm holding my marked notes, the ones with all the question marks. I knock. This is the moment. I'm not running away. I'm here to ask for help.
And that's when I realized I needed a concrete example. So I asked, could you give an example? That phrase is a lifesaver. It means you want a specific illustration. Listen to the intonation. Could you give an example? It rises at the end. Try it with me. Could you give an example?
The professor smiles and draws a quick diagram. Think of the league as a referee with no whistle, he says. I watch the lines connect. I nod and say, oh, I was overthinking it. That really helps. I feel the relief wash over me.
That's what I'm here for. I walk out with my notes, feeling lighter. And I learned that asking a specific question changes everything. That phrase, that really helped, is a great way to end the conversation positively. It shows the teacher their explanation worked. That really helped.
I step inside, and the door clicks shut behind me. Professor Harris looks up from his desk. I hold up my marked notes, take a breath, and say it. Professor, I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? My heart is pounding, but I finally said it.
Hear how Sofia said it? Could you explain it again? That's connected speech. Could you becomes could ya, and explain it links as explain it. It sounds more natural. Let's practice. Say could you explain it again, slowly, then fast. Could you explain it again? Now you try.
He asks, which part is confusing? I pointed the section on the League of Nations. He draws a quick diagram. Think of it as a referee with no whistle. Now, does that help? I nod slowly. The fog starts to lift.
So Sophia, the moment you asked that specific question, everything changed. And Professor Harris responded with a clear analogy that made it all click. That's the real payoff. One well-phrased question can turn a failing grade into a B+. And beyond the exam, you walked away with the confidence to speak up in any class. Now, for our listeners, let's practice that professional phrase. I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment? Try it with me.
And then it hit me. I was overthinking it. The League of Nations wasn't this impossible puzzle, it was just a referee with no whistle. And the phrase that got me there? I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time? That's the line I used. Now you try it. Repeat after me. I'm having trouble understanding this part.
And that realization didn't just fix the League of Nations. It changed how you studied. You stopped rereading the whole chapter and started focusing on the specific parts you had marked. That's what targeted questions do, they save you hours.
So I studied with a new focus. And the final exam came. I walked in, and the question about the League of Nations was right there. I wrote it down without hesitating. That's the payoff of one brave question.
You got a B+, and you didn't just pass. You walked into class the next semester and raised your hand on the first day. Because you learned that asking for help isn't a weakness, it's the smartest move you can make. Now you know the real lesson.
You got a B+ because you asked one specific question. That's the power of targeted help. You didn't just pass, you aced that exam section. Now imagine using that same skill at work. Saying, I'm struggling with this report. Could you walk me through it? Gets you the support you need. And the phrase ace it means to perform extremely well. For example, after that office visit, I'm ready to ace the final. Try saying that to yourself right now.
That's exactly what I needed to hear. Now I see why being specific matters. You pinpointed the League of Nations, and the professor could help you right away. I'm going to try that with my own questions.
Exactly, Ethan. And it's not just about school. I remember when I first used that with my professor. He smiled and asked which part. That one sentence changed everything. Now I use it at work, in meetings, even when learning new software. The key is being specific. It shows you've tried and you're ready to learn. What could you have asked? Next, we'll shadow the phrase again. I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment?
The useful wording here is, I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time? It's a polite way to ask someone to repeat or review something. For example, would you mind going over the budget figures one more time? Now, I'll try saying it myself. I'm having trouble understanding this part.
I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again? I said it exactly like we practiced, holding my marked notes. The professor smiled and asked, "Which part?" That simple question made me feel safe. I pointed to the League of Nations section and he nodded. Could you explain it again?
Wow. So he didn't think you were stupid? He just wanted to know exactly where you were stuck. That makes sense. That's a game changer. And the phrase, "Would you mind going over it one more time?" is so polite it softens the request and shows respect. Try using it when you need a repeat.
Exactly. And then he explained it with a different analogy. He compared the League of Nations to a neighborhood watch. I could see the cause and effect. Oh, that makes sense now, I said. When something finally clicks, you can say, "That makes sense now," to show you understand. It's a great way to end the interaction positively.
The professor explains the topic using a different analogy. That's exactly what you needed. Now, let's practice using this in a work situation. Imagine you're in a meeting and you miss a detail. You can say, "I'm having trouble understanding this part. Would you mind going over it one more time?" Try it with me. "I'm having trouble understanding this part."
I'm struggling with this topic. And he didn't sigh or roll his eyes. He just nodded and said, that's a tricky one." That's when I knew it was okay to ask.
So being specific actually made him more willing to help? That's a game changer. I always thought teachers would get annoyed if I asked for details. But he treated you like you were engaged, not clueless. That's the opposite of what I expected. What did he say next? How did he explain it differently?
He said, "Think of the League of Nations like a neighborhood watch. It was created to keep the peace, but without real power, it couldn't stop a bully." Suddenly, it clicked. I said, "So it was like a group with good intentions, but no authority?" He smiled. That's the power of being specific. And that makes all the difference. Now, the phrase, "I'm struggling with this topic," is a powerful way to ask for help because it shows you've identified the problem area. It invites the teacher to give you targeted assistance. For example, "I'm struggling with this topic. The causes of World War I still confuse me." Try saying that to yourself.
That analogy made sense even to me. So the next time I'm lost in class, I'll say, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" Not, "I don't understand anything." I'm going to practice that tonight. Thanks, Sofia. You just changed how I'll ask for help forever.
Then he said, "Think of the League of Nations like a neighborhood watch." That analogy changed everything. I finally saw the big picture. I thanked him and walked out, my notes now covered in new marks. I felt ready for the exam.
So when the professor used a different analogy, it all clicked. And the phrase that got her that help was, "I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment?" That's a professional way to ask for a step-by-step explanation. It shows you've identified the problem and you're ready to listen.
3 days later, I sat down for the final exam. My hands were sweaty, but I remembered the neighborhood watch analogy. I wrote confidently, and when I got my grade back, it was AB+. I couldn't believe it.
So that's the power of asking one specific question. You went from failing to AB+. Next time you're stuck, remember, "I'm struggling with this topic. Could you explain it again?" It could change your grade too.
I looked at the grade on my screen. B+. I almost dropped my coffee. All those hours of staring at my messy notes and one specific question changed everything. I walked out of the professor's office feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted.
I took the final exam and passed with AB+. I couldn't believe it. All those hours staring at my messy notes and one specific question changed everything. The phrase I used was, "I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment?" That's a professional way to ask for help. It shows you're serious about understanding, not just lost. For example, you could say, "I'm not quite clear on the assignment deadline. Is it Friday or Monday?" Try using it this week. Think of one concept you're stuck on. Write down that question and ask someone within 24 hours. You'll be surprised how much it helps.
A week later, I saw Ethan in the hallway. He said, "How'd you pull that off?" I smiled and said, "I finally asked for help." He nodded and said, "That's the smartest thing you can do." I realized he was right. Asking for help isn't a weakness, it's a strategy.
Sofia went from a messy stack of notes and a failing grade to passing with AB+. The difference was asking a specific question. Could you explain it again? That one phrase opened the door. So think about your own situation. What topic is confusing you right now? Write down one specific question using that pattern and ask someone within the next 24 hours. You'll be surprised how much it helps.
Another polite way to ask is, "Would you mind going over this one more time?" It's softer and shows respect, perfect for a professor or boss. For instance, you could say, "Would you mind going over the budget figures one more time?" I used that with Professor Harris, and he smiled and explained it clearly. He didn't think I was stupid. He thought I was serious about learning. So next time you're stuck, try that phrase. It can change how people see you and how well you understand.
I can actually imagine asking my professor that without feeling stupid. It's like I'm showing I care about getting it right, not just that I'm lost. And the phrase, "I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment?" sounds so professional. It's not weak, it's smart. I'm going to try it this week in my economics class. I've been stuck on supply and demand graphs, and now I know exactly what to say.
Exactly. And when you use that phrase, the other person usually responds with a smile and a clear answer. That's what happened with Professor Harris. He didn't think I was stupid. He thought I was serious about learning. It changed everything. I walked out of his office actually understanding the material.
One question can change everything. Next semester, I'm going to ask for help early. No more waiting until I'm lost. Thanks, Sophia. This really changed how I see asking questions. And for our listeners, remember, "Would you mind going over?" is your new secret weapon. Try it this week with a teacher or a colleague.
It means explain step by step, and it's perfect when you need details, not just a quick answer. For example, I asked my professor, "Could you walk me through the causes of World War I?" And he gave me that chain reaction analogy. Now you try it. Think of something you need explained step by step, and ask someone to walk you through it.
That's a game changer. Instead of just nodding when I'm lost, I can ask someone to walk me through it. I'm thinking about my job next time my manager shows me a new process. I'll say, "Could you walk me through the setup?" It feels so much more confident than staying quiet.
And the best part? I'm not waiting until the last minute anymore. Next semester, I'll ask questions in the first week. I already have a list of things I want to be clear on. It feels good to be ahead instead of catching up.
So here's a phrase you can use right now. "I'm not quite clear on this concept. Could you walk me through it when you have a moment?" It's polite, it's specific, and it works in class or at work. Try it this week. And remember, asking questions is how you get better. Sophia proved that.